Talk to me a little bit about, your journey to getting started, and then how do you communicate? I mean, I'm looking on your site, you have memes on there, you're talking about your family, doing jokes.
I started social media probably in my last year of residency. I was in the middle of COVID, so it
Yeah.
became kind of an outlet just to kind of initially just to have some fun and work on the creative side. And I always said that one of the things I hope to garner with social media, projecting relatability. I want people to realize that it's not something in terms of personality or upbringing that's out of reach for you. It's something that you can aspire to because you see somebody like you, and I think not just looking like you, but acting like you, engaging in the same content as you, sharing the same memes as you. I think it kind of brought a degree of relatability.
Hey everyone, welcome once again to Medical Practice Success Secrets. I'm your host, Theo Harvey, and I have another fabulous guest with me today, Dr. Joseph Acquaye. How are you today?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me today. It's a great honor, and I'm glad we could finally connect.
Absolutely. So, if you don't know Dr. Joseph Acquaye, he's a urologist who attended Meharry Medical College for medical school and completed his residency training at the University of Minnesota. He is currently part of a general urology practice in the greater Atlanta area. Additionally, he is a published author and a recognized social media personality with over 100,000 followers on Instagram alone, who shares medical education with a humorous slant. He currently lives with his wife and two children in Douglas, Georgia. So, Dr. Okway, this is a wonderful time to kind of talk a little bit about some of the work you're doing, specifically in the urology space. One of the things that we saw from a study published in the Journal of Urology found that 30% of men over 50 experience benign prostatic hyperplasia. I think I get that right, BPH. What lifestyle modifications do you recommend to manage or prevent BPH?
So BPH is kind of a tricky situation because with BPH, benign prostate hyperplasia, in layman's terms, that means that your prostate gets large. And to understand the implications of that, you got to think a little bit about the basic anatomy. So you got your bladder, and then right beneath your bladder, you got this acorn-sized gland called the prostate. And the prostate's function is essentially to help you maintain your continence, so make sure you don't leak. And it also produces some of the stuff we make in our ejaculate. Now, when that prostate starts to get large, we call that BPH or benign prostate hyperplasia. And because of its location, when it gets large, it can restrict the urine flow. So these are typically people who come in and say, I'm having a lot of trouble urinating. I got to stand at the toilet for a bunch of time. I'm waking up in the night. It's taking me a long time to start. I'm dribbling, things like that. And that's probably the most common situation where we see patients. And in fact, I've read research where it says that's essentially a lot of men's first interface with the medical system, this urinary issue, because it can become quite problematic. And in worst case scenarios, it can lead to infections. And I've even seen patients who just can't urinate at all and they got to come in as an emergency. So, in terms of the lifestyle modifications, I tell people a large part of BPH is genetic. Unfortunately, if your dad had prostate issues, or your uncle, or your brother, you're more susceptible to them. But there are well known supplements that we tend to give to individuals or recommend to individuals early on in the presentation of the BPH. So, for example, sal palmetto is a popular one. It's got a lot of research around it. It's a safe supplement, doesn't have too much interactions with other medications. And it's meant to help relax the prostate and, in some instances, potentially delay the further growth of the prostate. So, I have a lot of patients who do that. There are a lot of supplements you see on TV. Popular one is super beta prostate, which actually has some good research behind it. So that's another one I recommend. But aside from that, there's not any definable, hey, eat this or drink this and it's going to stop your prostate from growing. Unfortunately, it's just a matter of trying to be cognizant of the symptoms and not ignoring them so we can intervene early. Because I think one of the common issues I tend to see is that people presume that having all these urinary issues is just a normal part of aging. And as a result, they delay and delay and delay care until things have gotten to a certain point. And I just remind people that having to wake up 4 or 5 times a night is not normal. having to spend 5 minutes at the toilet is not normal, and that's not something that you should just attribute to age.
Mm. Uh, yeah, what if you have the opposite problem where maybe I drink a lot of water, maybe urinate too often? Is that a concern, or you?
Yeah, so that that is another common issue I see, and I
Mm,
tell people. Some people say, "Well, listen, I urinate fine, so I don't think my prostate is large, but I'm urinating a lot. I'm still waking up a lot, or sometimes when I get the urge to urinate, I got about 30 seconds, and it's Mission Impossible
mm,
music. I better get to a toilet really quickly." We kind of attribute that more to an overactive bladder, and the issue with overactive bladder is it can develop over time based on our habits. So certain professions like medicine, for example, or nursing, or people who are truckers, or professions where you get used to holding your bladder.
mm,
I always tell people don't hold your bladder all the time, but it's kind of hard, especially if that's something you're used to. But what that does is it can cause chronic changes to the bladder over time, and eventually the bladder responds by becoming more sensitive and overactive. So certain things that used to normally not cause any issues with your bladder, caffeine, carbonated beverages, citrus drinks, dark chocolates, can suddenly trigger your bladder to give you this urge that I got to urinate and I got to urinate often. And often those symptoms are more pronounced in the evening because you're at rest and your body has now entered a state of relaxation. So I tell people the first thing you can do with regards to those type of symptoms is try to make some changes. If you're drinking 3 cups of coffee a day, cut it down to one. If you're
mm,
drinking a lot of carbonated beverages, cut back on that. Spicy foods, you may need to chill on that a little bit. I often liken the bladder to the stomach. When you were young, you could eat whatever you want. You get older, acid reflux starts to become an issue. Same thing with the bladder. So definitely, I see that a lot, and that's usually how I counsel patients in that regard.
well, yeah. Yes, maybe I need to cut back on coffee a little bit. So thank you for that. But you brought up a good point. You said this is sometimes most men's first instance with the doctor, right? It's just the tourist. Men just don't like seeing the doctors for whatever reason, especially in the African American community. One of the things that we're seeing is just rise of cancer rates, and the American Cancer Society indicates that African American men are 1.7 times more likely to be diagnosed with prostate cancer than their Caucasian counterparts. So, how can we address this disparity through community outreach and education?
Yeah, so that's actually probably one of the things that drew me to the profession of urology in the first place because
Mm,
prostate cancer is a common problem. It's the most common cancer in men. More than lung cancer, more than colon cancer, it's prostate cancer. And a lot of times, because it's so common, you do see discrepancies start to arise. And of course, like you mentioned, African American men are at much greater risk of not only being diagnosed, but being diagnosed with a higher grade of cancer at the time of diagnosis. And, there's been a lot of research around it, but I think a lot of it is grassroots in terms of the type of interventions that I think will make a change. I've done many community outreaches at church, at barbershops, um, done online kind of outreach modules and things of that nature. And the idea is just to kind of get that dialogue out there that, hey, you know, it's not anything that is too onerous in terms of coming to see the doctor. I think a lot of people think about prostate cancer and prostate cancer screenings and they say, well, I don't want to go and get an exam and have this doctor go up and put his finger up my butt. And I always tell them, hey, that's old school. These days, we can get anything we need with a blood test. And I think demystifying the process uh, goes a long way. And then I also counsel people, and this is a common thing I tend to see, especially my patients who've been diagnosed with prostate cancer. They say, man, I didn't know, I was at church and I asked so and so and so and so and so and so, and they've all had prostate cancer and they've all been through it. And I say, yeah, this is more common than you think. And if there's some concern, it shouldn't be something that worries you to the extent of I'm not going to go and even try to figure out what's going on because I think that's another barrier. They feel alone. They feel like this is something that's unique to them, and also kind of creating that dialogue. not just between patient and doctor, but between other people who've gone through the similar thing. Again, helps demystify the process. Um, and then I think a lot of it is, people are interested in men's health. So I use that as a segue to start talking about prostate cancer. People are much more likely to attend a discussion about how to increase your erectile function or how
Hmm.
to, make sure you maintain that versus a discussion about prostate cancer. But once you
Hmm.
start that dialogue, then you can cross over into those areas. So I found that also being a good strategy. But again, it's very grassroots, opening up dialogue, getting out there, making sure the message is heard, and making it seem less scary. And I think those
Hmm.
are some simple yet effective strategies to get that out there.
Yeah, I had two friends, in the Atlanta area, who had uh, prostate cancer, and one had to go through some chemo to get it taken care of, and one, was they caught it early enough. But yeah, that is something. As I get older, I'm in my late 40s now, and so just making sure I get that blood test. But you're right, you see the old images of our fathers and grandfathers. You put the glove on, in the
Yep.
finger, and you bend over. So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, so I'm glad that that's no longer the case. I think that's just
No.
something
No. It's no
most
longer
men do
standard.
not. Yeah, I think I had that one time when I was maybe in my 30s or something because I
Yeah.
was worried about something. But yeah, since then, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, look. Speaking of which, so now that we don't have to be there in person to kind of get this test, we know COVID opened the doors for this telemedicine, right? Allowing for doctors like yourself to do things with consults that you probably weren't doing before, right? And open the doors. And I think the latest Journal of Medical Internet Research reported 60% increase in virtual urology consultants, especially during the pandemic. How do you see telehealth impacting the future of urological care currently?
Well, I think it's a good segue from your last question in that one thing we do at my institution is they do kind of screening outreach. So
Mhm.
you might have a bus or attend a community event and do PSA tests just en masse with people who meet the criteria. Those get sent to me electronically, and then I contact the people who've had positive results, and then we're able to kind of have a visit. So I think telemedicine kind of streamlines the process a little bit because that's screening for 50 people, and maybe five of them will have prostate cancer, and then we can already establish that therapeutic relationship, discuss the results, and then eventually transition to some in-person visits to discuss treatments and biopsies and things as indicated. So I think telehealth has definitely streamlined the process and it makes it more accessible. So I think it's another way of addressing these disparities because a lot of times some of it is just barriers to access.
Mhm.
Getting off work, making your way down to clinic, finding an appointment. So with telemedicine, you kind of circumvent a lot of that, and I think the patients appreciate it, and it kind of helps them again get plugged into just general care. Because I see a lot of patients who don't have any primary doc, and again, they just happen to be at this health fair. PSA came back, and then I start getting them kind of, okay, let's find you a primary doc. Let's make sure you're ready for any potential treatments and go from there.
Yeah. I mean, that's a challenge in healthcare, right? Just the accessibility of doctors' appointments. I don't know how long the national wait times are for urologists, but something like dermatologists, it can be months in certain areas of the country. Primary care is increasing more and more. Matter of fact, I had to make some switches to go more into concierge medicine because I needed more frequent visits with the doctors. I got older and it just not getting, what I got from traditional medicine. So I think telehealth and technology can be a wonders. I'm in that space. I kind of help doctors provide remote blood pressure cuffs, scales, things like that to kind of monitor patients at home, and having a team that kind of does that for the doctor and his staff because, as you know, the staff is too busy. They just don't have time to do these extra services for quality care measurements. So I think the rise of technology can increase that. This is kind of offshoot a little bit. Artificial intelligence, right? That's becoming transformative in every industry, right? We talk to doctors all the time on this podcast about how that's affecting their field. Cardiologists radiologists, obviously, but from a urology standpoint, how do you see artificial intelligence, changing your field?
So I think it's in our field, it's in its infancy, but it's definitely gaining some steam. One area that's kind of, again, kind of a bit of a segue, but one area where AI is becoming more prevalent is with regards to imaging results. So one thing we deal with as urologists are renal masses or kidney masses. So a lot of these are discovered incidentally. And what I mean by that is, let's say you're involved in a car accident, they scan you, and then they say, okay, your thing looks okay, but we saw something on your kidney, and then they need to
Mm,
see the urologist. And as you can imagine, that can lead to a ton of referrals. And then in a lot of cases, they're kind of benign looking masses. So, what a lot of radiologists and what we're kind of leaning towards now is being able to triage those masses and say, hey, based on the algorithm, this is not something you have to worry about. That patient doesn't need to see me. This is something that looks a little bit suspicious. Recommend urology referral, and and then when we do get suspicious matches, it's kind of helping kind of categorize them a bit more accurately. So that's, they've come in, they spoke to us about it, and I think it's something that's definitely going to pick up steam. And then I think, probably down the road you could probably see AI kind of help streamline things like annual screening, because there's a lot of recommendations. Once you turn 50, you got to do this, and I think patients tend to lose track of it. So having something to help automate that process, definitely, I think, will have some benefits down the road.
yeah. We also work with a lot of payers. You're right. Colon screening. Looking at PSA. All these things are kind of hitting at the same time, and they're looking to hire companies like us to kind of help with that outreach remotely. And additional getting the doctors and incentivizing them, because you're right, patients just struggle with all the different things they have to do. So I think you're right. If you can be automated, I don't want to get into the weeds on this, but you can create what they call AI agents to kind of be your front person to kind of handle all your scheduling. So it can schedule all that for you without you having to pick up the phone and be able to kind of reach out, set up your appointments. Or more importantly, if there's a colon test that can be delivered to your home, just automatically set that up and send that to you and to remind you to kind of take it. So there's all kinds of technology that can automate and make it more efficient to kind of do the process so people don't get overwhelmed. We're distracted all the time with technology and tools and the news and all that. And so I think, having a way to kind of automate something that's better for your health will be so important. So definitely, I think that was interesting how you mentioned that. When we talk a little bit about just, distractions, one of the big distractions is social media, and you've been really gone in on it, right? And definitely have garnered over 129,000 followers, excuse me, on Instagram alone. I mean, talk to me a little bit about your journey to getting started, and then how do you communicate? I mean, I'm looking on your site, you have memes on there, you're talking about your family, doing jokes. As a obviously I talked to a lot of physicians who do different things on social media. Some are very straight laced, some just do simple facts, but you're definitely taking maybe a different approach. So what brought you to social media, and why are you taking this kind of more humorous approach, if you will?
So I think that I started social media probably in my last year of residency. I was in the middle of COVID. As you can imagine, it was a stressful time. I had my second child at that time, and chief year by nature is just very vigorous. So having that compounded with COVID while living in Minneapolis in the midst of the George Floyd protests and everything
Mm,
going on at that time, it was a lot. So it
yeah,
became kind of an outlet just to kind of initially just to have some fun and work on that creative side, because when you're kind of working that right brain all day, you do need some exercise for the left side. And then when I finished residency, got into practice, we were just coming out of COVID, so things were pretty slow. You'd be in clinic all day and maybe have like 6 or 7 patients. So a lot of
mm,
downtime, and obviously downtime lends to figuring out different pastimes, and social media kind of became a little bit more to the forefront. I'm attending now. I don't have the same vigorous schedule I had as a resident, and then I realized, how would I approach it? Of course, like you mentioned, there's different ways to approach it. And I just knew that making just straight laced educational content for me would feel like a chore. And this
yeah,
was meant to kind of be an outlet. And I always said that one of the things I hope to garner with social media, besides disseminating medical information, building a following, was just kind of giving the or projecting relatability, because I grew up without any examples in medicine. You know, I lived in Toronto, and maybe I had one black doctor that I saw my whole life into my mid to late 20s. Um, and I realized that, you know, doctors, they seem like out of reach to an extent. Personality wise, they kind of just seem like these very distant figures. And social media has helped close that gap. And I said, I want people to realize that it's not something in terms of personality or upbringing that's out of reach for you. You know, it's something that you can aspire to because you see somebody like you. And I think not just looking like you, but acting like you know, engaging in the same content as you, sharing the same memes as you. I think it kind of brought a degree of relatability. I never anticipated it would go to this extent, and I think it's also given me the opportunity now to like share educational information utilizing the same platform, but obviously doing it in a way that's more engaging. Because, you know, of course, there's tons of resources out there, and I found that people tend to engage, at least from my experience, when it's something that they can laugh at, or it's something that they can go share with a friend, or it's something that they can say, hey, go look at this. And you know, it's brought a lot of referrals. It's brought a lot of people who come see me and say, "Yeah, I saw you on so and so platform." So I think
Yeah.
that's been super helpful in that regard. And it's just a reach. I mean, you can reach millions of people off one reel, and you can use that reel as an educational opportunity. And it's definitely been even more prevalent in this current age with our current administration and the degree of misinformation out there that people want to hear perspectives from doctors. And again, I still kind of give the hard facts, but with my humorous spin, which people are accustomed to. So I think that's been something that I didn't anticipate, but something that I enjoy. And then, of course, I still like to inject kind of personal anecdotes and experiences and family things because, again, it comes back to the relatability. I think when I thought about social media, somebody once asked me, what was my goal for it? And I said, it's the three E's: to educate, to entertain, and to encourage. So that's what I
Mm.
ultimately hope to do whenever I'm making content.
Mhm. Well said. I think you kind of hit there's another thing I think about when it comes to getting people to be an influencer, right? People have to know you, so have a good enough platform. They have to like you, right? Creating relatable content that is really who you are, and then trust. Obviously, having the background of a medical degree can bring that to the forefront, and then so now people can be influenced by you. And to your point, I mean, that's a lot of doctors we talked about this. Dr. Isang, he was a cardiologist and kind of just got, patients kept asking him the same questions over and over again. So he did FAQ and just kind of did it on social media, and that took off. Or Dr. Refi, who was a pulmonologist, and patients would, who had issues like breathing and couldn't see their pulmonologist, he gave them some simple breathing exercises via social media. And then Dr. Terry Everett, also known as Dr. Durag, he does music, and so he uses rap to kind of help educate people. So it's just amazing to me. We have a lot of misinformation. These quote unquote health influencers. We may even have people in the government who may be quote unquote health influencers giving misinformation. And so having real doctors out there, highlighting the importance of true evidence-backed science to what they're saying, I think is so important. So yeah, I mean, do you see, obviously you wrote a book about, some of this and background, but do you see yourself doing more with social media, like creating, courses, can, folks, a community? I mean, any thoughts on that as you built this out?
Yeah, you know, one of the things I realized about social media and then kind of health in general is that there's a lot of more buzz around men's health. And I
Hmm.
think my probably next venture would be to demystify men's health, but not just for like the typical urology patient who's like a 40 to 50-year-old see me for the first time, but I think even for the younger generations, because the misinformation is definitely spreading everywhere across all cohorts. So definitely trying to get more dialogue in that way and finding ways to do it. Like for example, Twitch is a huge thing uh, that is the platform of choice for younger folks, and so. I think maybe eventually I'll be moving on to there in terms of doing more content while being able to discuss men's health and take common questions. Because, a lot of times these days the media has changed. Somebody might just want to watch you playing a video game or watch you uh, just passing the time, like these huge influencers like Speed or Kai Cenat or these guys that everybody is watching. So I definitely see that as a way of leveraging social media by going through different platforms. And yeah, definitely, I've gotten a lot of opportunities through social media to speak, to go to events, to reach out and join outreach initiatives. So that would be an ultimate goal, and definitely I always want to give back to the generation behind me, uh, whether it's my alma mater, Meharry, or whether it's my undergrad, or whether it's just people from my background or where I'm coming from. So I definitely think
Mhm.
there's a lot of opportunities. And right now it's kind of a little bit of go with the flow, but definitely building with a purpose.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, being intentional about your content. Yeah, do you ever do any? I love the ones where doctors even react to like movies or something like that. With some like orthopedic surgeon, right? It's
Yeah.
reacting to John Wick. So yeah, if you did that, you would die. Stuff like
Yeah.
that.
As you can imagine, in the realm of urology, maybe I can't react to everything like an orthopedic surgeon would because I might get flagged. But I have definitely shared a lot of, I think one of my first or my most viral videos was actually just sharing some of my clinical experiences with regards to things I have removed from urethras. So as you can imagine, there was a
Oh
lot
my
of
goodness.
interest around that. So I definitely have some reaction stuff, some sharing of clinical anecdotes, um, sharing patient experiences with their permission, of course. And I think it really does help shed a light to the crazy side of medicine, but the human side of medicine as well.
No, God's no. I had the opportunity to watch this show called The Pit. My wife's a nurse,
Oh yeah,
and she worked in ED for a little bit. I don't know if you know about that show,
oh,
but
I love that
it
show. Yep.
actually does a yeah day in the life of emergency room doctors, and just really was visceral, right? Because it's streaming, so they can show more stuff and just nonstop. And my wife did it for rotation. I said that's what it was like. I said, oh, geez.
Yep. Yep.
So.
Yeah, it's a great
Godspeed to
show.
you guys,
Thank you.
all the things that you guys do. So, well, this has been wonderful, Dr. Quay. Where can people find you? What's going on next for you?
Yeah, so J academic underscore MD, JAKADEMIK underscore MD. That's my handle on both Instagram and TikTok. Always making content there. I'm always interacting with folks there. Uh, and then yeah, I kind of keep people abreast with what I got next in terms of actual podcast or live streams or discussions or talks. So we'll see where this year takes me, but definitely you can find me there and look forward to interacting and having fun online while also sharing some good information.
Absolutely. That's what it's there for. The three E's, everyone. Remember that. Definitely educate, encourage, and entertain. So thank you so much, Dr. Quay, for all you've done. And everyone, listen, if you like what you heard, please comment. Please let us know if we're doing a good job interviewing great doctors and the innovative things that they're doing and is new healthcare normal. Thank you for your time.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening. If you like what we just talked about and you want to learn more, click either to the right or to the left, and you can find out more information about how we can help you this year.